Hello and welcome to another TLC tutoring accounting lesson. Today we will be going over calculating federal withholding tax. Your textbook might refer to this as federal income tax, federal income withholding tax, but essentially this is the amount that the federal government kind of expects you to have to pay at the end of the year. Now, in order to complete one of these problems, you need a bit of information. They need to provide you with the gross pay or the means of calculating gross pay. For example, the number of hours someone's worked as well as their hourly wage. They need to let you know how are they going to be filing, single, married, and they also need to tell you the amount of the withholding allowance. In this case, we're going to assume each withholding allowance is $70, and you'll get to see what that means soon. They also have to provide you with some type of chart in order to complete this problem. So if you're working on this problem in some type of computer software, there's most likely an image pop-up that will show you that chart. For example, a lot of textbooks will consider this to be like an exhibit. So it'll have something like Exhibit 3.1. Click on that link and you should be able to get some type of chart. In this case, we have one employee that we're evaluating. We have Priya, who has gross pay of $3,000 for the current week. She is single and has one withholding allowance. And they want us to calculate Priya's federal withholding tax. And they're also telling us to make the assumption that each withholding allowance is worth $70. So let's start to see how we can use this information to calculate Priya's federal withholding tax. There's two steps that you want to complete here. Step one is actually quite simple. In step one, you're going to want to take Priya's gross pay and subtract out any withholding allowances. So in this case, Priya has gross pay of $3,000 and she has only one withholding allowance, so her withholding allowance is going to be $70. If she had two, this number would be $140. If she had three withholding allowances, it would be $210, so on and so forth. In this case, she just has the one, so we're just going to subtract out $70 here. So when we subtract out her withholding allowance, we find that she has $2,930. Now, this number is going to be extremely important. This is going to be the number that we apply to this chart right over here. So that $2,930, let's go ahead and keep that number in mind and then move on over to this chart so that we can do step two. Now, the chart basically is telling you if the amount of wages after subtracting withholding allowance, which we just did, is this amount, then this will be the tax that we have to apply. So in this case, Priya has $2,930 for the current week. So let's go ahead and find which bracket Priya is going to be in. This is going to be Priya's bracket. So since that $2,930 falls between the $1,796 and the $3,700, this is going to be the line that we evaluate. So in order to evaluate this, we kind of have to go step by step. It says that her tax will be $356.90 plus 28% of however much her number exceeds 1,796. So it sounds a little bit complicated, but once you practice it a few times, it isn't as bad. So let's take a look here. The chart says that her tax will be $356.90 plus the amount plus 28% of the amount by which her $2,930 exceeds 1,796. So in order to do this, I always recommend that you kind of go off to the side and start calculating this. That way, once you have your final calculation, you can just kind of plug it into that plus sign and you're ready to go. So we are going to be charging 28% of however much her $2,930, this number we dealt with earlier up here, exceeds this number here, 1,796. So essentially what we're saying is that we're trying to find how much this 2,930 that we calculated before exceeds 1,796. So let's go ahead and try subtracting that and see what the excess is. So 2,930 minus 1,796. We find that the excess is $1,134. Now, of that amount, we are going to take 28% of that. So this number here, 28% of $1,134. That means that the additional amount is $317.52. So essentially, Priya ends up having to pay $356.90 plus $317.52. She is going to have to pay $674.42. And when I say pay, at this point, she's not going to be paying it. That's kind of a poor choice of words. But what's going to happen is this $674.42 is going to be withheld from her $3,000 gross pay. And if for those of you who have worked jobs and have waited to the end of the year, in the United States, once we're done, we have to take a closer look at what an individual owes. And assuming that the payroll had worked successfully, this $674.42 should be putting Priya on track to not owe at the end of the year and to not basically get too much back. So it's supposed to kind of align her taxes with where she's going to be at the end of the year. All right, so one more thing before I go ahead and end this video, I want to kind of show you a method that I usually like to do, which is almost like working backwards. I know that this part, step one, is fairly simple, just taking the gross pay and subtracting out that withholding allowance. But this part down here tends to be a little bit more complicated because of this chart. One thing that I always think you might want to do is once you find the line where your tax bracket is, try working your way backwards. So rather than, you notice I started here and kind of worked my way down, but start here and kind of work backwards. So let's kind of see how that might look. First step, find the excess of 2,930 over 1,796. Find the excess. Once you have that excess, take 28% of it. There's that 28%, and that's the number we found. Then add that to $356.90. Add it to there. So you're kind of noticing that if we go backwards, it almost makes a little bit more sense logically, and we're not having to go off to the side to do that intermediate math. So the first way I showed you is typically the way that it is taught, but working backwards tends to kind of work with people's minds a little bit better than that original method. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. And I hope to see you in our next video. And in the meantime, happy studying.